All right, welcome. So, pros and cons of self-employment versus 9 to 5 work. So, right now I'm currently in a transition period of my life, going from high school and public education to a combination of self-education and self-employment, just because of the lifestyle that I'm choosing to move into after high school. So, it's an interesting transition into my life where I'm actually starting to fully embrace the self-employment lifestyle, right? So, I'm currently in a combination. I'm not working a 9 to 5 job, but I'm still working a regular job. But I'm working that job part-time, and I'm working full-time on my business, which is my self-employment. So, I'm basically just going to talk about what I view as the pros and cons of self-employment, right? So what are the challenges that may come with self-employment, and what are the benefits? Because I believe there are a lot of very valid benefits for a certain select group of people, right? So certain people definitely belong in this category of self-employed and definitely will thrive in this sort of work environment versus a 9 to 5 job, whereas the opposite is also true. Someone might thrive more as an employee, right? So this video is kind of catered towards those who want to be entrepreneurs, who want to be self-employed. And if you're not one of those people, it's still interesting to look at, kind of get a new perspective on another lifestyle that you could or could not be living, right? Before we start, though, I want to quickly announce that my free community, you can click that link in the description and you can join that free community. It's currently live, right? Everything is all set up and ready to go, so you guys can join and hop in there. And you can also, if you want to work with me one-on-one, you could book a coaching call with me. For right now, I just have one-time calls, but I'm going to have coaching packages soon in the future. So yeah, you can go and book a call with me and go and check out that free community. All right. So first things first, the biggest point, and I put this first because I know this is what everyone cares about, right, is actually making money, is how you make money, right? So the way I like to work and the way I've noticed that I'm good at working is I will produce a lot of work in a shorter period of time, right? So I might work for 4 hours of the day, but I want to work and produce a lot in those 4 hours, right? So like I want to create a lot in those 4 hours, right? So that means that I'm creating a lot of output into the business. And I do this whether I'm working at my normal job or I'm working on my business. The only problem with that is if I'm doing that at my normal job, right, I'm putting out more effort and I'm giving more output, right? Putting in more energy, putting in more work, right? I'm not returning, or I'm not receiving the return on my investment, right? I'm not actually receiving the return on my work just for the amount of time that I spent there, right? Whereas the business will make more money the more work that I do, right? The more that I produce, the more money I can make in my business, right? So for self-employment, making money is actually based on output, right? So your ability to scale your business is based on your output, how much work you're actually willing to produce, not how much time you're willing to log into the business, right? I could log 12 hours, I could log 2 hours. If I get the same amount of work done, I make the same amount of money, right? And so the key is actually just finding something that you enjoy doing, that you enjoy working on, that you enjoy creating, and then working on that as much as possible, creating as much of that as possible. So like my example is YouTube, right? So my thing is YouTube, right? So my thing is actually creating as much content as possible and putting it out there, putting it on YouTube, right? Putting it into my school communities, right? Putting it everywhere that it needs to go so that you guys can get all the information that you're interested in and that you want, right? And so I'm providing to you guys, and that's the work that I'm providing, right? That's the thing that I'm creating, is the videos, is the content, right? So I'm providing that to you guys. The more of that I make, the more content that I create, and the more content that I put out, the more people that are going to be interested in other content of mine, right? Paid content of mine. And then, therefore, the more money I can make, right? But if I'm working for somebody else, and I go and I'm working harder in a shorter period of time, I'm going to burn out before my shift's even over, and then I have to sit there and I might have done all my work and I'm just kind of sitting there waiting for extra tasks to do, and so you end up wasting time as a result. And this is one thing that I don't like, is I don't I don't like wasting time, right? A lot of people will say, well, you're getting paid, right? You're getting paid for your time, so what's it matter? I don't enjoy getting paid to sit on my phone personally, unless I'm doing something on my phone that applies to a business, right? So it's like I don't enjoy getting paid for nothing, and I don't enjoy doing nothing either. So it's like why sit there just because I'm getting paid when I could be working on something that might not pay me then and there, but if I work on it enough, then it will pay me enough in the long run, right? So and this is just me, but scaling an income based on your actual output and not based on the amount of time you spend there is a huge advantage, because I'm willing to create and put out a lot of content, right? I'm willing to do a lot of work, and I can do a lot of work. I can create the output, right? But that doesn't really work well in an environment where it's not about the work you do, but rather the amount of time you spend doing the work, right? And then so in a job, scaling your income with a salary, right? So instead of being able to scale your income consistently as you can with a business, you don't really have this option, right? The only way to scale your income is to work long enough, work hard enough, and be lucky enough for your boss to want to give you a raise, right? You might have to ask for the raise. You may be gifted one from your boss, right? You might have to ask and work really, really hard for it. You might just not get a raise, period, right? So there's a lot of factors that go into that, and that raise is just another $2 per hour. So you're only making an extra $2 for every hour of your life that you spend there. So it's like, to me, that's not worth much at all, right? To me, that's not really worth the amount of work that's being put into it, when I can just put that same amount of effort and energy into a business and continue to scale that income as a result. Okay, so the next point is time management and free time, right? So the nice thing about a business, and this is especially for an online business, right? But the nice thing about a business is that you pretty much have full time and location freedom, right? So considering that my business is online, this is just that much better, right? So I have full time and location freedom. I can be wherever I want, so long as I have a background to record in, right? And like if I'm traveling, I can have a nice beach in the background, right? That's not a big deal. So as long as I'm able to record videos, as long as I have internet and everything, I can be wherever I want, and I can be there whenever I want, any time of the year, any time of the day. And I have this freedom because my business is based on my ability to make content, right? So if I have a week where I'm not going to be able to record content, well, I'm pretty good at recording back-to-back videos, so I could just record 7 videos in a row, and then I have that week covered, right? Or I could be out somewhere else. I could be in another country even. I could just record content in the mornings while I'm out there. And then my job, right, my business is covered. My business is still taken care of. I'm not neglecting my business by taking free time to myself. But I have the ability and the choice to determine whether I want to go out and travel somewhere and spend some time doing that, or if I want to come back and be here, be home, right, be working, whatever. So I have that decision fully within my own grasp, right? It's not something that an employer is telling me whether I can or can't do. It's me that makes that decision, right? So if I have things to work on, I'm not going to go on a trip. But if I want to go on a trip, okay, cool. All I got to do is work extra hard for the next couple weeks to prepare and make sure everything's covered while I'm gone, right? So it's much less of a big deal for me to take time off, because I have the choice to do it whenever I want, and I can go wherever I want, and I can be there however long I want, right? There's no obligations waiting for me when I come back home, right? And then so the next thing is picking work hours. So when you have a normal job, when you're working a normal job, the best you get to do is actually pick your hours, right? So the best you get when it comes to freedom is picking your hours and determining what hours you're going to work. And a lot of times, a lot of employers are kind of just going to put you on whenever they need you, and you're kind of just going to have to go with that, right? You don't have much of a choice there, right? You're not the boss. You're not the big man, right? you're just there to make sure that the dishes get done. For example, if you're a dishwasher, right? You're just kind of there to make sure the job gets done. And if they need you to do the job at this time, at this day, they're going to put you on. And obviously, like, you're allowed to talk to your employer and be like, hey, I can't work at these times. I can't work on these days. And you can set things up like that. But for the most part, you're really not going to have too much freedom when it comes to when you work, when you're working the normal job, right? Because this is in comparison to entrepreneurship, because in entrepreneurship, you have full 100% control. You decide exactly when you work, right? And so it's just a little bit different, right? You don't always choose when you work when you're working a normal job, right? You might have to work on days where you had things going on, right? You might have to work on days where you made plans. I don't think this is fair, in my opinion, right? I think that employers should treat their employees as human beings who have lives, and should talk to them as if they're human beings that they're making plans with, right? Because if I expected someone to work for me at a certain time, I'm going to talk to them and make sure that that time frame works, right? That's just me, though, because I'm self-employed, and my employees would be slightly different than if I was to have employees at like a normal 9-to-5 style business, right? Right, so my employees would still be project-based for the most part. They'd be paid per project, so it doesn't really matter when they work. But still, if I was trying to set something up with someone like that, I would talk to them and I would set up the time when it works for them, right? See, most of the time employers don't do this, right? Because they don't really care when you want to work. They care when you need to be there in order for the business to keep running. That's all they're worried about, is continuing to keep the business running. So that's where it's your job to really take initiative. Like for me, I always take initiative. My employer always knows a week beforehand what days I'm going to be able to work the next week, right? So you just take initiative and you try to make it so that it works for you. You can make it so that the work hours work for you as best as possible. But you're not going to have a whole lot of freedom there, right? So like once you're on the schedule, it's very hard to change things up like that, right? Versus if you have your own business, right? You get to choose exactly when you clock in and exactly when you clock out, and it's 100% up to you, and it's 100% up to, like for me, it's 100% up to what I need to get done, right? So if I need to get more done, I'll work longer. If I don't need to do as much, I'll work shorter, and I'll take some time for myself, right? So yeah. Alright, so next thing I have is people. The people that you are actually going to interact with in either model, right? So self-employment, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, when we are networking with other entrepreneurs, when we're networking with other like-minded individuals, when we're networking with like-minded individuals, we would be networking with entrepreneurs, because that's what we do, right? So we are networking and we are creating a relationship with other people that have ambitions, that have goals, that are working towards those goals, that are on that higher frequency. And so because those are the people that we're naturally networking with, that we're naturally talking with within our work environment, right? This raises the energy of both ourselves and our business and our work and what we do, right? And so we all know that we are the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And so the people that you are networking with the most, right, the people that you are going to be interacting with based on your business are going to determine a lot about how much you enjoy that business, how much you can get out of that business, and how it affects you, right, how it affects your energy and your frequency. Right? So, like in my opinion, when you're networking with entrepreneurs, you're not going to really be networking with a lot of bad people, shitty people, right? You're not going to be networking with drug addicts. You're not going to be talking with drug addicts. You're not going to be talking with alcoholics. You're not going to be talking with, like, just degenerates in general, right? People who hate their lives, people who complain, right? You're not really going to be around these types of people when you're in a room of entrepreneurs, right? But when you're working in a 9-to-5 environment, when you're working in the normal work environment, the problem with this is that the types of people that are in those environments, especially the types of people that have been there for a long time, right, people who've worked that job for an extended period of time, they are almost like cynical, right? They're just very depressed, very depressing, right? It's a very low energy to be around, right? They're depressing, or they're just like degenerate, right? They don't have good values, right? They don't have good morals. All they care about is getting drunk after work, right? So these types of people, just being around these types of people lowers your energy, and it lowers your vibration, it lowers your frequency. And it just, if you don't believe in all that spiritual shit, right, it just changes the way that you think, right? Because you start to hear these things over and over and over again. Oh, I fucking hate this job. Oh, I hate this shit. This shit's ass. I want to go get drunk after this, right? You hear these things and it starts to play in your head, and so it starts to really infect your thoughts, right? And it starts to infect your mind with this low, depressing energy, right? And this doesn't have to be from a job, right? This is just being around these types of people on a consistent and regular basis, right? Being around lower vibrational people on a consistent and regular basis, right? It just changes your thinking. It lowers your level of thinking, your level of awareness, to a point where, well, like them, you're just unhappy with life, right? You're not happy with where you're at. You don't like working, and you don't want to go to work here, right? So you don't enjoy the work you're doing, but it's what you have to do all day, every day. And so you're in this weird depression that you can't get out of, because you sustain your lifestyle with the work that you do, but you hate the work that you do. And so, like I said, you end up in this weird cycle. This continuous cycle of basically not even from your own thoughts, not even from your own perception, but basically learning to hate the environment around you, because the people around you hate the environment they're in, right? And so when you're around people who are negative, who complain, it automatically lowers your vibration. It automatically will make you dislike and disassociate from the environment around you. But yeah, or it might not even be negative people. It might not even be complaining, right? These might be people who have really, really bad habits, right? They might have a bad habit of drinking on the job, for example, or they just might have a bad habit of drinking, period, right? And so they talk about it all day, the whole time you're there. And so you're constantly taking this in, even if you don't like drinking, right? You're still taking in this energy. And so it kind of splits your attention, splits your focus. If you're trying to do both, right? If you're trying to get your shit on track while also listening to bro talking about how he can't get his shit on track and he needs to get drunk tonight because of that, right? You're basically splitting your attention, even if you're not the one engaging in that conversation, right? Being around people who think that way and talk that way will split your attention and lower your vibration, right? So second to last thing I have is learning. So when you're working for yourself and when you're doing self-employment, you have the freedom to learn and then monetize any skill that you want, right? So for me, my job is to learn, right? And I love that because I love to learn. I like reading books. I like learning new things, right? Learning about new topics. So if my job is to learn and build up skills and then teach them to other people and monetize it that way, I'm basically always going to be pursuing learning. I'm always going to be pursuing the next piece of knowledge, the next thing that I can learn, the next skill that I can master and develop, right? And so that's kind of the beauty of this job, is that I have the freedom to literally just learn anything that I want, and then as long as I can create something out of it that can monetize it, right? And then it can apply to my job. And even then, like I can learn whatever I want, and it doesn't even have to apply to this, right? But just learning itself will make me better at this. And so it's still important for me to learn, even if it's not directly going to be monetized. It'll still help me with my monetization process because it'll make me better at creating content. Whereas when you're working a normal job, you have a very limited need to learn, right? So you need to learn what you need to learn in order to master the skill for your specific position and your specific job, how to communicate with others, right? How to work with others, and then how to get the specific job that you're doing done and how to do it the best way possible. Once you've learned and mastered that, there's not much more that you need to learn within the job. And so you kind of stop learning. And you'll see this with a lot of older people. When you stop learning, you start to decline, right? Your mind starts to decline. You start to get a little bit slower mentally. You get a little bit dumber, right? And this is because when you don't use it, you lose it. So the moment that we stop learning, our brain starts deteriorating and it starts dying off. And so we need to continue learning all the time. But people who get a job and stick to a job, at a certain point, there's nothing left to learn, right? They've learned it all. And so their brain stops learning. and they're just living off of habit day in, day out. And then so what happens is their brain actually loses the ability to learn new information, right? It loses its neuroplasticity and its ability to change and alter neurons and neural connections in order to create new habits and new behaviors, right? So we don't ever want to be in an environment where we don't need to learn. That's why a lot of very successful people will talk about putting yourself in a room where you are the least competent, right? Never being the most competent in a room, because what this does is it makes you complacent, right? If you are the smartest person in a room, you're going to get complacent because you feel that you are better than others. Whereas if you are always the dumbest person in a room, you will always continuously get smarter, right? So the last thing I want to talk about is actually just the negatives for working for yourself, right? So the first thing is full responsibility, right? So I have to take full 100% responsibility and accountability for my income, whether I'm making enough money every month to cover everything that I need to buy and pay for, right? Expenses and food and paying for my business, so like subscriptions for my business and stuff, and any other expenses for my business, right? So I have full responsibility for all of this. I have full responsibility for whether the work is getting done, full responsibility for where the money is going when it comes in, right? And I have full responsibility for how much money I'm making. So having full responsibility and being given full responsibility means that I have to actually take initiative with every single aspect of my business, every single aspect of how I'm making money, right? And so I have to be fully involved with the things that I do when it comes to making money, when it comes to my business, right? Whereas with a job, all you got to do is show up. Like, really, all you got to do is show up and then clock in and then clock out when you're done. And that's it. It's very simple. There's not a lot of stress. You're not responsible for a lot of things outside of your specific job. And so it takes a lot of the stress off, right? You don't have to worry about the back end. You just have to get the work done and clock out and leave at the end of the day. And then you get paid for it at the end of the week, right? So it is a lot simpler in that sense. But simplicity isn't always the best. So the next thing is taxes. So taxes are different for a business owner. And I put this in negatives just because it is going to be extra work. You're going to have to make sure you learn how to do your taxes properly. But at the same time, being a business owner, we do have the advantage of write-offs. So we can write off all of the expenses within our business before we're taxed. Whereas as an employee, you're taxed. You're taxed beforehand. So every paycheck you get, you're taxed on that paycheck, right? And so you get the paycheck, you put that into your bank account, all of that money is yours to spend. You've already been taxed. Your employer has already taken the tax out of that. But when you make money as a business owner, let's say I make 10 grand a month as a business owner, that 10 grand after write-offs, so at the end of the year, after all of the expenses for the business and anything else that I have to spend, like for me, my business is my education and my self-development. So any education, anything that I have to pay for in order to work on myself, develop myself, work on my business, right? All of these things can be written off, and then at the end of the year, you get taxed on what's left over, and then you basically just get taxed on the profit of your business rather than all of the money that comes in as it comes in. So there is a slight difference in how taxes work. But it's a little bit more complicated as a business owner because you have to be fully responsible for it, right? So you have to be the one to track how much you're making, how much you're actually profiting, how much you're spending on expenses, and how much you're spending on just lifestyle purchases, right? So what are actual business expenses, and how much are you writing off, and then how much money do you have left over? That's profit that you have to calculate tax on, right? So it's just a little bit more complicated. There's a little bit more work to it than if you were working for somebody else, because somebody else does it for you already, right? Working for somebody else, it's already done for you. Working for yourself, you have to track it. You have to be responsible for it. You have to make sure you have enough money in the account to pay for your taxes, right? And then the last thing is, it is a much higher risk. It is a way higher risk than just getting a job, right? So there's either money involved, there is your name involved, right? You're risking putting yourself out there, right? And there is a level of energy exchange that's involved. So you're putting something forth, you're taking that risk, you're putting something forth before you know that you're going to get a return, right? And so that's the risk. You're taking a bigger risk but it is for a higher reward, right? If I get a 9 to 5 job and I'm clocked out at 60K a year or 50K a year at 40 hours a week, right? It doesn't matter how good I am at what I do, right? It doesn't matter how much work that I do. It just matters that I'm there 40 hours a week and I get paid the same amount, right? I could do that, right? I could be comfortable and I could work like that for the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, I've made $250,000. Cool, right? But the thing is, if I took the risk, I might not have made money the first year. But the second year, I might have made 50 grand. And then the third year, I could have made 100. And then the next year, $1 million, right? So it is a higher risk, but because of the scalability of this business, it will take more time, but it will go further than if I were to just settle with a consistent income. But alright, so that's all I have for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to see more content on anything self-improvement, click that subscribe button and go and check out that link in the description to join my free community. But other than that, I'm out of here. Peace.